Today's mindful moment. Ever feel like you're supposed to be happy? Like society's giving you this roadmap to a perfect life, but you just aren't. What if this whole chase after being normal is actually what's keeping us from truly connecting, with ourselves and with other people?
That's a really provocative question and a fascinating one to explore.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today using Alison Espach's novel, The Wedding People. But don't worry, this isn't your typical book review. We're using this story as a springboard to unpack the whole idea of normal and whether it's even something worth chasing after.
It's almost as if we've all been handed this script, this idea of what a successful and fulfilling life should look like. The perfect job, the picture-perfect family, the constant stream of, Instagram-worthy moments. But what happens when reality doesn't quite match up to that script?
Well, in the book, we meet Phoebe, a college professor going through a divorce and grappling with some pretty heavy existential questions. And she finds herself at this extravagant wedding in Newport, Rhode Island, surrounded by people who, at least on the surface, seem to have it all figured out.
And that setting the wedding becomes a microcosm of this societal pressure to perform happiness. Everyone's dressed to the nines, smiling for the cameras, but there's this underlying tension, this sense that everyone's playing a part.
Right from the start, the book challenges this idea of normal as something desirable. Phoebe actually envies people who seem to fit in effortlessly, especially her soon-to-be ex-husband, Matt. There's this telling moment where he talks about wanting to be normal, and Phoebe realizes how different their definitions of normal are.
It highlights how normal is often equated with conformity, with adhering to these societal expectations that may not actually align with our own values or desires. For Matt, normal means fitting into this traditional mold of marriage, family, and career success. But for Phoebe, who had a very unconventional upbringing, that definition feels stifling.
And as we get deeper into the story, we start to see how this pressure to conform, to project this image of happiness, can actually lead to isolation and a disconnect from our true selves.
Absolutely. Take Leela the bride, for example. On the surface, she seems to have the perfect life. She's beautiful, wealthy, and about to marry the man of her dreams. But even she admits to having planned this wedding her entire life as if it were the culmination of everything she'd been working towards.
Which is interesting because it contrasts so starkly with Phoebe's internal struggles. We learn that Phoebe has actually been contemplating suicide for years, a secret she keeps hidden beneath a carefully constructed facade.
And that juxtaposition really underscores how appearances can be deceiving. We often assume that those who have achieved these external markers of success and happiness must be fulfilled, but the reality is often much more complex.
It's like everyone at this wedding, including Phoebe, is wearing a mask, presenting a version of themselves that they think is acceptable or expected.
And those masks make genuine connection almost impossible. There's a scene where Phoebe has a conversation with Gary, the groom's father, and they both let their guards down for a moment, revealing glimpses of their true selves. But even then, there's this hesitation, this fear of being fully seen and understood.
It reminded me of how Leela describes Gary as being good to everyone, even cashiers, and how Phoebe's friend Jim observes that she's both brainy and suicidal. It's like these surface-level observations miss the complexity and depth of who they truly are.
It speaks to the limitations of these societal labels and expectations. We try to fit people into neat little boxes, but the reality is that we're all multifaceted, messy, and constantly evolving.
So we've got this idea of normal as this performative act, this pressure to project an image of happiness and success, even if it means sacrificing authenticity. But then the book introduces this really interesting counterpoint through Phoebe's relationship with Juice Gary's young daughter.
Their connection is so unexpected and yet so powerful. Both of them feel like outsiders struggling to find their place in this world that seems to have all the answers. And what's fascinating is how their shared sense of otherness allows them to connect on a deeper level than any of the adults at the wedding.
Yeah, it's like they see through each other's facades, recognizing the pain and vulnerability that's hidden beneath the surface.
There's this really poignant moment where G says, it's like he's totally forgotten her, referring to her deceased mother. And that really echoes Phoebe's own experience of keeping her cat's death a secret from Matt. Both of them have experienced loss and this feeling of not being fully understood by those closest to them.
And that shared experience creates a space for them to be authentic with each other, without judgment or expectations. It's like in a world obsessed with projecting happiness, they find solace in acknowledging the sadness and the messiness of life.
It's a beautiful example of how genuine connection can blossom in the most unexpected places, often with people who are seemingly very different from us.
It makes me think about how We often try so hard to fit in to present this perfect image to the world that we end up pushing away the very people who could offer us true understanding and support.
That's a really insightful point, and it speaks to the danger of equating normal with this unattainable ideal of perfection. Because when we're so focused on maintaining that image, we miss out on the beauty of imperfection, the raw and messy moments that make us human.
Right. It reminds me of that scene at the faculty party where Matt receives an award and everyone expects Phoebe to be thrilled, but instead she feels this pang of resentment because no one seems to appreciate her intelligence in the same way they do his.
It's not that she isn't happy for him, but the situation exposes this underlying feeling of inadequacy, this pressure to achieve a certain level of success that's defined by external validation rather than her own internal sense of fulfillment.
It's like she's performing happiness for the sake of appearances, but deep down she's struggling to reconcile her own aspirations with these societal expectations. And we see a similar dynamic in her marriage as well.
Absolutely. That last dinner they share is particularly heartbreaking. Phoebe is trying to write, but the words aren't coming, and Matt keeps asking about her progress almost as if he's checking off items on a to-do list.
There's this unspoken expectation that she should be producing something groundbreaking, something worthy of recognition, and she feels like she's failing to meet that standard.
And that brings us back to this interesting parallel between Phoebe and Leela. Both of them are trapped in these roles that they feel obligated to play, whether it's successful professor or blushing bride.
And neither role allows for genuine self-expression or vulnerability. It's like they're both wearing masks, just different versions.
Exactly. And we see Leela's mask start to crack when she confides in Phoebe about her father's death and her strained relationship with her mother. She's carrying all this grief and anxiety, but she's expected to just paste on a smile and play the part of the perfect bride.
It's the societal expectation that women in particular should always be pleasant and agreeable, even in the face of immense emotional turmoil. It's like they're not allowed to be fully human with all the messiness and complexity that entails.
And then we have this incredible turning point, this moment of shared vulnerability between Phoebe and Leela in the bathtub. Phoebe confesses her suicide attempt, and it's like a dam breaks. All the carefully constructed walls come tumbling down, and they finally see each other as human beings rather than these idealized versions of themselves.
That scene was so powerful. It's like in that moment of shared brokenness, they find a deeper connection than they've experienced with anyone else.
It highlights how liberating it can be to let go of those societal expectations and just embrace our true selves, flaws and all. And it's not just about being vulnerable with others, it's also about being honest with ourselves, acknowledging the parts of us that we've been trying to hide.
Because when we deny those parts of ourselves, we deny our full humanity. We become these fragmented versions of who we truly are.
And that fragmentation leads to isolation, both from ourselves and from others. We're afraid to let anyone see the cracks in our facade for fear of being judged or rejected.
Which brings us to the wedding itself. It's almost as if the universe is saying, okay, enough with the charade. It's time to get real.
The symbolism is so striking. This perfectly orchestrated event descends into chaos, mirroring the emotional turmoil that's been brewing beneath the surface.
We see this in the confrontations between Leela and her mother-in-law, Patricia, the tension between Gary and his family, and even Juice's meltdown at the dinner table.
It's this collective unraveling, this shedding of pretenses that forces everyone to confront the messiness of their lives. And it's in that messiness that we find some really surprising moments of grace and connection.
Like the scene where everyone end up at the pool stripped down both literally and figuratively.
They've been forced to shed their masks and just be themselves, flaws and all. And in that shared vulnerability, they find a strange sense of comfort and camaraderie.
It's like the pressure cooker has been released and they can finally breathe. It's such a powerful reminder that true connection doesn't come from trying to be perfect. It comes from embracing our imperfections and allowing ourselves to be seen for who we truly are.
And that's something that Phoebe really starts to understand as the story unfolds. Remember her realization that she's been spending her life trying to be someone she's not. Yeah.
She's been so focused on achieving external validation that she's lost touch with her own desires and aspirations.
And it's only when she starts to shed those layers of pretense that she can begin to rediscover who she truly is.
It's like she's finally giving herself permission to break free from that script of normal and embrace a path that feels more authentic and fulfilling.
Exactly. And that journey of self-discovery takes courage because it means challenging those ingrained societal expectations and trusting our own intuition.
And the book takes this a step further by suggesting that maybe happiness isn't the ultimate goal,
That's where it gets really interesting. The novel seems to suggest that perhaps we should be focusing on seeking meaning instead.
which is kind of a radical concept in a culture so obsessed with chasing happiness, right?
Absolutely, because happiness can be fleeting. It's often tied to external circumstances, whereas meaning comes from a deeper sense of purpose, a connection to something larger than ourselves.
And that can be anything, right? It doesn't have to be some grand world-changing mission. It could be about finding joy in simple things, pursuing creative passions, or just making a difference in our own small corner of the world.
Exactly. It's about aligning our actions with our values, living in a way that feels authentic and purposeful, even if it doesn't always lead to those traditional markers of success or happiness.
So how does this idea of seeking meaning actually play out in the novel?
We see it most clearly in Phoebe's journey. At the beginning, she's lost and adrift. Her marriage is falling apart, her career feels stagnant, and she's even contemplating suicide. But through her experiences at the wedding, her interactions with Juice, and her own internal reflections, she starts to reconnect with a sense of agency and purpose.
Her relationship with Juice seems particularly meaningful. She finds this unexpected joy in mentoring and supporting this young girl who's also feeling lost and out of place.
It's like she discovers a purpose outside of herself, something that gives her a sense of belonging and makes her feel needed. And it's not just about her helping Juice, it's a reciprocal relationship where they both learn and grow from each other.
And then there's her decision to take that job as the caretaker of that historic mansion.
That's such a symbolic choice. She's stepping away from that traditional academic path, embracing a more unconventional lifestyle. It's a decision driven by a desire for meaning and authenticity rather than societal expectations.
It's like she's finally found a place where she can be herself, where her unique skills and passions are valued. And it's not about achieving something, but ultimately, that's where the real growth and fulfillment lie.
It's in those moments of courage and vulnerability that we discover who we truly are and what we're meant to do in this world.
And that's a journey worth taking, even if it doesn't always lead to that picture-perfect happy ending that society tells us we should be striving for. So as you go about your day, we encourage you to ponder this. What does meaning look like in your life? What small steps can you take to cultivate more of it? Remember, the pursuit of meaning isn't about achieving some grand destination. It's about finding those moments of connection, purpose, and joy along the way.
And those moments, however small, can have a profound impact on our lives and the lives of those around us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the wedding people. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with anyone who might be grappling with these questions of normal and the pursuit of meaning. And if you're intrigued by the novel, we've included a link in the show notes where you can purchase a copy. Until next time, keep seeking those meaningful moments wherever you find them.